Yes, this is gonna be yet another video of my master series where basically I look at the filmography of a filmmaker that most people know. I try to recontextualize it, review every single film, try to rank them, and this is for a celebration of the director himself, of course, but also to have fun because there is a new movie of him coming out at the cinema right now, and it's called Trap, and it's starring Josh Hartnett. I don't want to say more because obviously if I'm not gonna be talking about that movie at the beginning of this video, it means it's probably good, because yes, we're gonna be starting at the very bottom, the shittiest, the worst movies that M Night Shyamalan has ever made.
2 tickets for the M Night Shyamalan movie?
Wow. Really?
No! God, please, no! No!
Welcome back to Torn Apart, and today we're Shyamalaning a couple of movies together, and slowly we're gonna be hiking to the top of the mountain to see which ones I actually recommend and I find to be objectively good. When it comes to M Night Shyamalan, I feel like we're all in this weird 50-50 multiverse thing where you either hate his films or you love his films and you find him like a genius. Everyone is talking about the return to form of M Night Shyamalan, or they're ready to spit on him and throw him to the grave.
Cut her again. We'll keep our hands in there to keep the incision open.
God, I can help, brother.
Don't. No, I'll take care of her.
Does anyone know the name of that film? It was with Jack Nicholson and Marlon Brando. Both.
Girl, what the fuck is you talking about?
I keep appreciating this director mostly because of that reason. When you go into an M Night Shyamalan movie, you don't really know exactly what to expect, besides the fact that it's gonna be definitely weird, it's gonna be written, and specifically it's gonna be starring dialogues that seem like they've been written for aliens, not necessarily for human beings. They have a lot of twists. Very often he tends to make thrillers, not just one genre kind of films. He tends to play with tone as well. There is a lot of comedy, sometimes on purpose and sometimes not on purpose, just because of how weird certain script is, or certain dialogues, or certain performances as well. You never know what you're gonna get. Whether you're gonna get the worst movie of all time, comparable to Tommy Wiseau's The Room, or you're gonna be getting something quite fun and revolutionary like, I don't know, Split, for example, which is a bit of a weird film but still very, very fun to watch. This is also something we can say about M Night Shyamalan. His movies are mostly quite fun, even when they are really, really bad. First of all, I'm not going to be talking about his directorial debut, which is called Praying with Anger, and his second film, which is called Wide Awake, and that is mostly to do with the fact that I didn't find them. I was unable to find them across different streaming services, or even through my weird and incredibly tedious DVD collection, so I'm sorry I'm not going to be talking about those, but most critics have not talked about those films, and no one actually talks about his directorial debut, so I don't really know exactly whether it is worth discussing. And I'm not going to be talking about his TV show The Servant, of which he's the showrunner and he's directed a couple of episodes as well. Critics and audiences alike have appreciated quite a lot, and I just want to focus on the films. I've not seen it yet, mostly because it's on Apple TV Plus and I don't have Apple TV Plus. We're gonna be starting with the worst of the worst, which for me is Old.
They have to know what this place does.
I don't know.
You're lying! Look,
What is that?
a message.
This movie, I watched it at the cinema, and honestly, it drove me insane. I gave it like a 0.5 out of 5 stars on Letterboxd, and I did that just to be nice, because honestly, this is very, very close to being one of the worst movies that I've ever seen from so many different perspectives. I think that the concept of this film is incredibly weird, but not in a good way. I feel like the fact that he has reduced himself to just staying on this beach, it makes the film look very cheap and low budget at the end of the day, so you end up not being even excited about the things that are going on, because you keep going back and forth with things that are actually happening. The performances are absolutely insane, and this is mostly to do with the script, which is just written by AI, honestly, because there are so many like tonal inconsistencies. It makes no sense, and the actors themselves, you can tell it on their faces that they don't know exactly what they're doing. Sometimes it's unintentionally funny, but most of the time times. It's so incredibly painful to watch. I'm gonna tell you very quickly what it is about, just in case you'd like to watch it for some kind of reason. I don't really know why you want to watch Old, but basically it's about a family on a tropical holiday who discovers the secluded beach where they are staying is somehow causing them to age rapidly, reducing their entire lives into a single day. And then we're gonna be jumping into Avatar: The Last Airbender, which gets also a 0 from me because I didn't watch it.
The Avatar is dead. If he was here, he would protect him.
I didn't want to watch it. I heard way too many bad things about this film, and I've been refusing to watch it for years and years and years. And after watching the live action version and after seeing a couple of episodes of the actual animated series, I don't want to watch it even more. Like, honestly, everyone looks so incredibly sad just if you look at the trailer, and I don't even want to tell you what it is about because basically everyone has agreed that this film is not worth anyone's time. And the more I grow old, the more I don't want to waste my own time. So like, I'm gonna be listening to other critics and YouTubers and the audiences themselves when they tell you that it's a waste of time and you shouldn't seek it out. So trust me, trust them. This is probably the worst thing that he has ever done.
It sucked.
It sucked.
It's terrible.
It's horrible. I should have gone and seen Twilight.
Easy, guys. Easy. Let's take it down a notch.
I can't say it subjectively, but we can say it objectively because of what the people have agreed upon. I still think though, probably visually speaking, it looks more interesting than Old, so it's a tiny bit higher than Old, just because even if you turn your brain off, it's a little bit more interesting at least. The next film is actually gonna be started to divide some people because it's one of the films that people kind of like describe as some of the best work that M Night Shyamalan has ever made. I gave it a 1/5 on Letterboxd, and it's Signs.
Here it comes. Don't be afraid.
You shut up! I'm so fucking scared right now, you shut up!
Let me tell you why I really hate this film. But first of all, let's go into the synopsis real quick. A family living on a farm finds mysterious crop circles, but this makes it even funnier, in their fields, which suggests something more frightening to come. I feel like the thing that I hate about Signs is kind of the fact that it's all subtext and no actual meat to the bone. As in, the aliens keep appearing and disappearing, but they don't actually do anything to the main characters, so they build so much tension at the end of the day, and you're sitting there being like, I really don't get it, because if you compare these films to other kind of alien invasion films, or it would be actually most accurate to compare this to possession films, because when it comes to the structure, it resembles more a possession film where a ghost / a demon is trying to basically psychologically torture a family. People love this film mostly because it's very mysterious. It's kind of like an exercise of tone over complicated things, but I honestly couldn't get into the actors' performances. I found them incredibly over-exaggerated. And the final problem, I think, is that when something interesting happens, we're told that it did, and we just sit there being like, okay. And I draw this comparison with Annihilation, and Signs made me feel like if in the movie Annihilation, instead of the scientists actually going into the zone, into the forest, and exploring these weird things happening around them, they just stayed in the lab and had weird visions and started running around the lab for the entire runtime of the film. Does it sound interesting? No, it doesn't, because it's a bad thing. It's a bad movie. Bad movie. Stop wasting my time. This is the M Night Shyamalan that makes me go insane.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
But as I said before, I prefer directors who get you in that kind of mood, who make you go insane, instead of the directors who make mediocre films where you're sitting there being like, I mean, I guess it's a Netflix movie. Now we're gonna be stepping a little bit above the bad category and go into mediocre. And the mediocre category has to do with the fact that M Night Shyamalan, you could really feel that he's trying, but he's not trying his best to make the best out of his films. And of course, it wouldn't be a surprise to you if I said that After Earth is exactly the type of movie that I described a couple of seconds ago.
Do you know where we are?
No, sir.
This is Earth.
I I gave it also 1 out of 5 on Letterboxd. It's one of those movies where it does exactly what you expect it to do. It's the least M Night Shyamalan-esque movie that he's ever made across his entire filmography, mostly because there are only 2 characters, Will Smith and of course his son Jaden Smith. And Will Smith can't really do the campy type of Shyamalan acting that he needs from his actors at the end of the day. So this ends up being way too serious. It's never actually fun. And the serious part actually doesn't work because the science fiction aspect of this film is just completely wasted. And I really don't like the concept of like 2 characters who speak to each other without actually ever being in the same room. I hate those kind of films, or even the kind of films where you're talking to AI, which is just like sitting in your head. And just because you don't want to spend the entire movie with the main character not saying a single word, this is one of those problems. 1000 years after a cataclysmic event forced humanity's escape from Earth, Nova Prime has become mankind's new home, and legendary General Cypher Rage returns from an extended tour of duty to his estranged family, ready to be a father to his 13-year-old son Kitai. When an asteroid storm damages the Cypher and Kitai's craft, they crash land on a now unfamiliar and dangerous Earth. And the plot keeps going as well, but I'm not gonna tell you because it's incredibly boring at the end of the day. The next movie on my list of mediocre Shyamalan movie, it's Lady in the Water. A lot of people actually would probably agree with me when it comes to this film because it feels like it has an interesting concept, it has a lot of promise, but it doesn't really fully go into it.
What's happening? I thought it was gonna be safe!
M Night Shyamalan's Lady in the Water.
This is the kind of movie that kind of resembles something that Guillermo del Toro would do as well. It is talking about fables, it is talking about how to tell a story, but at the end of the day, it just doesn't work because maybe it didn't have the budget to make it shine as much as it should have. Apartment building superintendent Heap rescues what he thinks is a young woman from the pool he maintains. When he discovers that she's actually a character from a bedtime story who's trying to make the journey back to her home, he works with his tenants to protect his new friend from the creatures that are determined to keep her in our world. One thing that I hate about this film is the fact that it's completely built on the damsel in distress kind of trope and it never actually gets out of it. And I also feel like M Night Shyamalan is really good when it comes to simple concepts which go completely insane. And Lady in the Water is clearly a fantasy film, and every single time that he introduces a new concept, it teases another one, which leads to another one, which leads to another one, and at the end of the day it becomes very superficial and it kind of gives you the impression of depth without actually giving you any of the rewards that comes from good complex writing. Of course, the actors' performances in this film are completely insane. It feels like everyone is on a completely different level. They're really high, and it makes sense because the script is kind of weird. I still gave it a 2 out of 5 on Letterboxd because I think this is one of those mediocre films that he's made which has the most amount of potential, and if he were to remake it today, I'm pretty sure it would turn up quite great. And the next one, probably people are gonna go insane when I actually say it out loud because it's The Happening. I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars on Letterboxd.
Run.
Shut the windows and the doors!
Here it comes! Could this really be happening?
Hold on. The Happening is, without a doubt, objectively speaking, I don't know why I keep doing this because it's not sarcasm, one of the worst films ever made in the history of cinema. But it's so funny. Like, honestly, there are so many iconic memes in this film, and Mark Wahlberg has reached like the peak of badness when it comes to the type of performances that he's delivered across different years. Even Zooey Deschanel looks incredibly just confused by everything that is happening on screen, and the concept of this film is so insane that you have to enjoy some of it. Like, this is the perfect, like, too bad it's good movie.
Why are you eyeing my lemon drink?
That's why it's above the other ones that I talked about before, because it's one of those movies that if you don't take it seriously, you're gonna have such a good time. Should I tell you what it is about? Because maybe you've forgotten, I don't know, it's been such a long time and a lot of weird things have been happening in our real world as well. When a deadly airborne virus threatens to wipe out the northeastern United States, teacher Elliot Moore and his wife Alma flee from contaminated cities into the countryside in a fight to discover the truth. Is it terrorism? The accidental release of some toxic toxic military bioweapon, or something even more sinister. It's the trees.
Hello? My name is Elliot Moore. I'm just going to talk in a very positive manner, giving off good vibes. We're just here to use the bathroom, and then we're just gonna leave. I hope that's okay.
The trees are pushing people to kill themselves. I should end the video here, to be honest. Now we can finally retire the mediocre category and get into good times. I'm talking about the good movies that most people have agreed that they're not bad, they're not mediocre, they're not forgettable, they're decent Shyamalan work.
If you fail to choose, the world will end.
And let's start with Knock at the Cabin, which came out just a couple of years ago. The performances in this film are actually quite good, and I think the only things that don't really work out are the things that Shyamalan really didn't adapt well from the original book, which is a Paul Tremblay book, and also the entire plot around, like, this is a gay couple this time around, and they have to sacrifice themselves to save the kid. I don't know, I found it incredibly weird and at some point almost homophobic. Having said that, the performances are incredible. I think that Dave Bautista gives us something very, very different from the stuff that he's given us in all of the other films that we've seen him. I really, really liked Rupert Grint as well, who honestly is really underutilized in this film. I feel like he should have been there for way, way longer. But in case you haven't seen it, I recommend it. I gave it a 3 out of 5 score on Letterboxd, and it is about a family who is vacationing in a remote cabin, who are taken hostage by 4 armed strangers who demand that the family make an unthinkable choice to avert the apocalypse. With limited access to the outside world, the family must decide what to believe before all is lost. And I feel like this is exactly the type of movie that stands on that 50-50 line, whether you're gonna actually love it or hate it. Even though technically speaking, I think it's still a really, really good film. But the problem with this film that some people might have hinted at is the fact that it's 7 people sitting in a room for the entirety of the movie. It screams low budget, it's very indie-like. There is not actually that much happening. There is a lot of monologuing, a lot of philosophizing, and if you hate that part of M Night Shyamalan's films, because he tends to have a lot of characters who do that kind of stuff. Very often it's old ladies. It's old ladies, if you notice it across different films, who come up and kind of have these weird existential monologues about the meaning of life, even though maybe it's not even related to like the question that the other actor has asked them. They're just starting doing their own thing. And this entire film is based on that idea. This is basically just a tennis match in between the aggressors and this family, trying to convince each other that the world is not actually going to end and they need to chill, basically. And I understand why people wouldn't really like love it, but honestly I quite did. The next movie in my ranking is gonna be Glass. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars on Letterboxd. This is like the end of his weird superhero trilogy. Started with Unbreakable and then Split and now Glass.
That sounds like the bad guys teaming up. A lot of people are going to die. Don't do this. Are you ready?
Which is basically like the Infinity War of indie drama superhero movies that, yeah, as I said before, he's been working on for like 20 years, even though nobody knew. I'm pretty sure he didn't know either. It's just that Split worked out so well that he was like, I actually have an idea about Glass. Let's make a movie and try to bank on it. I really cannot imagine a world where M. Night Shyamalan has been constructing a cinematic universe in his mind for the last 20 years. That is not a thing. That does not exist. In a series of escalating encounters from a security guard, David Dunn uses his supernatural abilities to track Kevin Wendell Crumb, a disturbed man who has 24 personalities. Meanwhile, the shadowy presence of Elijah Price emerges as an orchestrator who holds secrets critical to both men. One thing that we can appreciate about this movie is that it really feels like the culmination of the trilogy. You can really understand the link between all of the different films. He's not really done anything different from one film to the next, but that kind of helps it because tonally it's more consistent, and also it's still as weird as the predecessors. It relies on quite a lot of interesting performances, and I also really liked Bruce Willis in this movie. I feel like this is one of the last performances by Bruce Willis where you actually see on his face that he actually cared about everything going on screen. And I know that because of his illness, it's probably why most of his performances were kind of phoned in the latest movies that he's made. But in this film, I really like, it made me tear up and think about the original Bruce Willis back in the 80s and the 90s, where he controlled the world and he had kind of like the weight of the world on his shoulders. You can really tell that in this film. Maybe one thing that I don't like about it is that if you don't remember what the pacing was in Split and Unbreakable, you're gonna find this movie incredibly slow, and also some of the fighting choreography doesn't work that well. James McAvoy, honestly, he does the best that he can, but when it comes to Bruce Willis, you can tell there are a lot of stunt doubles working on him, and it ends up looking very clunky. Like, if you're used to action movies, you could really tell that Shyamalan doesn't really know how to direct action and how to make it interesting. He's the kind of guy who can create tension, of course, especially within a very small kind of environment, but if you make him direct an Avengers type of movie, he will turn it into the most disgusting looking thing ever made. So these are probably the reasons why people maybe didn't get into Glass as much as I did. Of course, I didn't give it a perfect score because it's still fun, but I don't think it's his best work either. Next, we're going to be heading into The Village, which is one of his movies that I define as the most potential. It has a 4 out of 5 score on Letterboxd for me. And let's jump into the synopsis immediately, because it's one of those films that it's all mood. There is a lot of mystery. Well, you could say that about any kind of Shyamalan movies, but this one in particular, it's the kind of like folk horror vibes that nowadays we love so much. When a willful young man tries to venture beyond the sequestered Pennsylvania hamlet, his actions set off a chain of chilling incidents that will alter the community forever. When I'm talking about most amount of potential, this has to do mostly with the fact that, I mean, spoiler alert for a movie that came out more than 10 years ago, the fantasy aspects of this film are not real, and I hate when fantasy films do that. That kind of fake out, that kind of bridge terabithia thing where you almost believe that this could be real, you're the same level of knowledge when it comes to the main characters, and then you get fooled by the magic and you're like, no, actually, it's not real. And you're sitting there being like, oh, fuck you then, because the creature design was amazing. As I said before, this is a movie where he really managed to get the tone right as well, and he literally built a mystery that was incredibly interesting, and then like this castle of cards that he's built just crumbles completely by the end of it. I really don't understand when filmmakers do that, when like they try to make you believe into the unbelievable, and then they're like, nah, actually the real world sucks and is boring. And you could see it in this film as well. So that's why I took a star out, because honestly this would have been perfect for me if it wasn't for that last minute fake out. The Visit is the terrifying story of a brother and sister who are sent to the grandparents' remote Pennsylvania farm for a week-long trip. Once the children discover that the elderly couple is involved in something deeply disturbing, they see their chances of getting back home are growing smaller and smaller every day. I gave this a 4 out of 5 on Letterboxd, and honestly I rewatched this as well. I feel like the only critiques that I've seen online about this film have to do with the fact that this relies almost too much on the trope of old people are ugly, disgusting, scary, and we shouldn't really trust them. And a lot of people don't find that really cool, mostly because, well, older actors don't really get a lot of chances in Hollywood or in big films just in general, so we only see negative like depictions of them, so it's kind of sad. And I completely agree with that. At the same time though, this is a really creepy film, and I'm pretty sure that if you haven't had like a strong relationship with your grandparents, if you watch this film, you'll be like, next time I see my grandparents and it's the middle of the night and someone like turns on a light or makes a weird like noise in the kitchen, I'm gonna run straight home. Honestly, this film works really well when it comes to the tension, when it comes to the fact that the children are the main characters as well. You can get away with way more things when it comes to weird dialogues, when it's children who are actually saying the things, and also when it's older people who are supposed to be a little bit crazy. So of course it doesn't really matter whether they're saying crazy things, because it's the concept of the film, they're supposed to be crazy. So basically the kind of like weirdest and worst things about Shyamalan's writing immediately get cancelled just because of the concept of this film. So this helps it a lot. This is one of the only ones that I've rewatched quite often as well, because honestly I really like it. I love the way that it's shot as well. This is the movie that was actually categorically called the return to form of Shyamalan, because basically he stopped working for quite some time, I think, right after Avatar: The Last Airbender. This has shaky cam, a lot of long takes. It's kind of a found footage horror film as well, and we don't get a lot of good ones within that subgenre. And honestly, just the concept of this film is so good. So good. There are a lot of people who say basically that Shyamalan's movies, they rely too much on plot twists sometimes, to the point that he makes the entire movie almost boring in comparison to actually finding out the truth. But this is one of those movies where you can go back and basically look at all the weird things going on in the background and try to see whether the children actually were ignoring a lot of the signals, right? But I do understand why it didn't click with a lot of people. I do not understand why it didn't click with horror fans though, because this is a really good horror film, and this is probably one of the only straight horror films that Shyamalan has ever made. And next is gonna be our film of the year, Trap, which came out, well, last week, and I had a really good time. Honestly, Josh Hartnett is incredible, and I was kind of weirded out by the fact that the main plot twist of the film is revealed almost instantly in the trailer. I feel like this is one of those films where it would have benefited from not knowing anything about it, almost like guerrilla marketing, like being like, oh, there is this movie coming out, we don't know who directed it, and then just because of the plot twist, you find out, oh, it's actually M Night Shyamalan. That would have been incredible, right? Instead, like, they actually have to reveal the plot twist where the main guy from the trailer, so Josh Hartnett and his daughter, he's the butcher, he's the serial killer that the police are looking for within this huge stadium. I really like the way that everything is choreographed within this film. It must have been so difficult to make sure that everything made sense. When you look, for example, at the police who are like searching the crowd and taking people one after the other to interrogate them, and of course all the plot conveniences which are gonna help the serial killer to actually get away with it. Honestly, the tension of this film is insane. I know that this has divided quite a lot of people, to be honest, because they couldn't get into the dialogues, they couldn't really get into the performances as well, or also they couldn't get into the fact that most of this movie takes place at a concert. Yes, the headline person is actually M Night Shyamalan's daughter, and I think I heard online that there are like almost 6 songs which are performed entirely on screen. So this is almost like a concert movie for his own daughter. So there is a lot of nepotism going on at the same time. So I do understand why people really didn't dig that. But personally, as a Taylor Swift fan, I was sitting there being like, this is actually a well put together concept and film as well, because you're sitting there being like, how would you get out? Like, if you're actually there. So you start thinking like the serial killer trying to get out, and I found that fascinating as well, mostly because it's one of those situations that has not been exploited that much. Think about the Final Destination films. Concerts have not been exploited that much, especially within the horror genre, and I'm like, you did something there. You really did something, and Josh Hartnett, he keeps surprising me. Also, this is one of those films that is consciously very funny. Like, honestly, I feel like Shyamalan really intentionally put a lot of jokes within this film, while most of the times, as I said before, the comedy within his films is kind of unintentional because of how absurd some of the situations that he's kind of trapped his characters in are. I also love how this movie develops. It would have been incredibly boring if the movie just took place basically at the concert. He manages to escape, or he doesn't manage to escape, he gets shot, the end. There are a lot of films which are like that. When you think about, for example, heist films, they just take place around the heist and there is nothing after it.
We should climb down and see where it leads. It looks really cool. What?
So I love the fact that this movie never ends and just keeps going and going and going and escalating, escalating, escalating. And you really put yourself in the shoes of this serial killer who just cannot get a break. Like literally, he cannot get away with it. And you could tell that this is a tragic story where you're sitting there being like, this guy is never gonna go away with it. And you have to sit there and watch him suffer through it. And it's really cool. And I also think that when it comes to representing a serial killer, he actually managed to make him look interesting, especially because he didn't give us that much. We don't have any single scene, for example, of Hartnett actually killing and torturing these people. We get only the police investigation pictures of the dismembered corpses and stuff. That is also very clever and well done when you think about it, because most people within this genre, they try to build tension by showing you how disgusting this people is while he's actually doing the things that he's talking about, right? So I love the fact that he managed to create so much tension out of just the circumstances and not necessarily the act of violence itself. So the tension is all kind of psychological at the end of the day. I loved everything about it, even though there are some performances which are kind of weird, and I really love the ending as well. I came out of the theater being like, I would love if this weird guy joins like the other weird superheroes and they create some kind of Suicide Squad and they go on weird adventures together. Like he's really good at creating weird characters, especially when he's making up his own stories. I feel like Shyamalan is not as good when he's adapting books and other stories that are not his own, mostly because he has such a weird and peculiar sense of humor and also vision of the world as it is. The next one in my ranking is gonna be Split, which got an almost perfect score of 4.5 out of 5. And it's basically about Kevin, who has evidenced 23 personalities to his trusted psychiatrist. There remains one still submerged who is set to materialize and dominate all the others, the Beast. He is compelled to abduct 3 teenager girls led by the willful, observant Casey. I feel like M Night Shyamalan did to mental health was basically science fiction and fantasy due to storytelling, meaning that he is exaggerated so much what the idea actually is, to the point that it's incredibly insane. And it's funny, but it's also very entertaining to watch. Like, this is also why we go to the cinema. We don't necessarily go to learn things about how the actual world works. We go to like dream about the weird universes and try to experiment a little bit with what we know about the brain, mental health, human capacities, their strength, their potential and stuff like that. Of course, this relies completely on James McAvoy performance. Honestly, this movie would not work at all if it wasn't for him. It has a lot of the weird dialogue things that Shyamalan does, but since it's a lot of different personalities and McAvoy does it so well, you almost can't tell. Honestly, this is the least Shyamalan movies I've seen just when it comes to the flaws. As in, this movie almost has no flaws. It has such great tension. It has such a great performances by Anya Taylor-Joy as well, who was at the beginning of her career as well. I really recommend this film. Of course, Shyamalan is not really good at portraying mental health issues and problems just in general, so go in thinking that this is a fantasy, of course. Otherwise, you'll just get angry at the film for weird reasons at the end of the day. This film kind of changes completely every 10 or 15 minutes just because we are in front of someone completely different who sees the world in a different way as well. So of course, this is a movie that is never boring. It's always exciting, and of course you fear for the lives of these young girls as well. So even though there are a lot of puzzle pieces, they all fit perfectly together.
Not every gift. Is anyone there? Is a blessing. The sixth sense.
Please make them.
And the next two ones, of course, you probably know because we've reached the end of his filmography, are gonna be The Sixth Sense and Unbreakable. There's not that much we can say about them, so let's put them together. I gave them perfect scores because I think they are just perfect for what they were trying to achieve in completely different ways, of course. The Sixth Sense, in case you've forgotten, it is following an unexpected tragedy. A child psychologist, Malcolm Crowe, who meets a 9-year-old boy named Cole Sear, who is hiding a dark secret, and when it comes to Unbreakable, Unbreakable, it's about an ordinary man who makes an extraordinary discovery when a train accident leaves his fellow passengers dead and him unscathed. The answer to this mystery could lie within the mysterious Elijah Price, a man who suffers from a disease that renders his bones as fragile as glass. Shyamalan knew it back then, and a superhero film is at least as good as its villain, and Elijah Price is the most interesting villain that I've seen in a really long time. It kind of reminds me of Lex Luthor as well, or those kind of villains that are incredibly clever, but like you could defeat them so easily, but you don't, because you just perceive them as physically disabled. So you just sit there being like, I don't know what to do against you. Like there is nothing you can do against them, and I find that fascinating.
131 people died so you could finally understand the destiny for which you were born. Are you ready for the truth?
When it comes to The Sixth Sense, it's one of those films that is haunting. It has kind of like changed the pop culture as well. It's a film that defined and also kind of doomed M Night Shyamalan for the rest of his filmography and career as well, because people expect the twist now. Every single film is about the twist. What is it gonna be? And that's probably why I think that in the movie Trap, he revealed it immediately in the trailer, because he's playing a little bit more with that definition as well. He's showing that he's not just a twist guy, he can do so much more. Having said that, I don't have that much to say about The Sixth Sense and Unbreakable. Many people have talked about them so much and so tediously as well. They're perfect films, and they're perfect at their time as well. I'm pretty sure that if they came out today, they would be boring movies that happen to go on Netflix or any other streaming platform. But back then, they were movies that kind of challenged everything we knew about thrillers or supernatural thrillers, and also superhero movies. Like Unbreakable basically did what Scott Pilgrim was gonna do in the future, Kick-Ass was gonna do in the future, The Boys was gonna do in the future. So make postmodern content about superheroes, and he made it back in the 90s, which is absolutely insane. Having said that, that is basically it when it comes to M Night Shyamalan. This was my ranking. Let me know down in the comments what you think of my ranking, of course, which is, you're not gonna agree with it. I know, I 100% know there's a lot of subjectivity involved when it comes to his work, but let me know what is yours definitive ranking down in the comments. If you like this video, don't forget to come back in 2 weeks, because I have another video, and this is gonna be the topic unless I decided to change it for one reason or another. I am a slave to the YouTube algorithm and to pop culture after all. And here at the bottom you can see other thumbnails popping up of other videos where I talked about approximately the same themes as today. Don't forget to smash that like button. Every single time that you do that, you create a new plot twist within a plot twist within a plot twist in an M Night Shyamalan movie.
Can I count on you?
To the point that you don't really know where the plot is, where the twist is, where real life is. Plot twist. I was never really here.
Back in the 90s, I was in a very famous TV show.
And just so can I point out, we have a line of people that I don't think, did any of you guys like the movie? No!
Da 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 da